we have one of the first steps of the actual printing going on. So right now I am printing one of the blowpipe's wings. I've printed these separately to the main body because with 3D printing you have to have things at a certain angle, otherwise they can't print. You can't break the laws of physics, so you can't have things that aren't built from the ground up. So as you can see here, there's little support structures being added to this blowpipe wing, and it's slowly being built up. The wing of this will take maybe 8 hours to print, so you leave it on there and then just go play RuneScape or whatever, go to work in my case, today. So that will be stage 1, get some stuff printed out. The next step in the physical process is we've now got 2 pieces which I have edited in editing software to have cut up into 4 separate models, which is the wings, and I split the main body into 2. I first did a test print so I could see what was going on and see if it would actually work, and this is what told me that the wings would not work without being printed separately because they're at a too high angle to be printed as one piece. And then once they've been printed, you got to do a lot of sanding. So these come with massive amounts of support and other wastage all around the place, and I would say it takes an hour to sand and get one of these pieces nicely ready to start gluing together. So it involves lots of dreidling and sanding in general, and once you're ready you can start piecing the actual model together. Now in this case I haven't got the wings yet, they are currently still printing. I have one wing which doesn't quite look right, and I have actually fixed it up with some modelling clay and then sanded the clay down. That's what you do because often prints will slightly fail, bits will fall off or it won't look quite right, or a part of the printing will fail, and rather than try to keep printing over and over again and repeating your error, you want to try and fix this up with I'm using something called milli putty, which will just goes rock solid. It's normally used for repairing sinks and that sort of thing, but once I've got it on my model it will solidify and you won't be able to tell the difference once painted. So right, we're now sort of halfway through, I'd say. We've got to make sure to get the other wings printed off to attach to the side of the blowpipe, then we can start the actual painting stage. Okay, so this is what it looks like when it comes straight out the 3D printer. As you can see, there's loads of stuff to clear up, which I'm going to be doing with pliers, sandpaper, and time. This is kind of the boring part, and you normally scratch your hands up constantly dealing with the sharp plastic. And in other progress, I have glued together the main body part of the blowpipe. This is really strong now. Absolutely no way this is falling apart. This is I can actively hit it against my table and no movement at all. I've got some industrial strength glue, and the fact that I added those bumps and grooves inside the models means that it's now super strong. This is compared to the cat dagger I did before, which is super delicate and you can't move it around at all, like swing it too vigorously or it just falls apart at the joints. So that's something I learnt from one of my first bigger 3D prints, and I'm now always doing the work in the modelling software and adding those in Maya. As an aside, if you're wondering about the Yu-Gi-Oh mat, these Yu-Gi-Oh mats are actually quite interesting. These are really good if you want to do painting or other dirty work on them, because they're good quality mats that people give away for nothing. I think they come with free cards or something and you get mats free with them and no one wants them. So if you're doing like any DIY work, you can just cover your floor or table in these and they cost practically nothing. Okay, the bits are all coming together. Next I'm going to be grinding down the binding putty I put to cover up the join of the main body of the blowpipe. So hopefully once I sand this down, this was used to fill in the big gap you saw previously, this will start to look flat, and then once I've painted over it you won't be able to tell there's a join at all. That is the hope. If you look at the old cat blade I showed a second ago, you can definitely see where the joins are existed. So if this putty works, this will be a super big improvement in making these things look smooth. Okay, I've got a shit ton of dust all over the place, but Mainly what I've done is I have smoothed this down to, smoothed it down, and so this will hopefully now look a lot better. You see that the yellow stuff has filled in the holes in between the join, so when I wash this up and paint it, it should start to look a lot more like one piece. Okay, after a very tedious sanding process, we're now ready to start applying some primer. So this is going to cover all of these in a sort of white starter paint, which I will then be able to start painting on properly later. So I'm going to have to do a couple of coats of this and wait for it to dry, then do the other side of them. So this is where the point where things like the putty that I use to cover in holes, this is where that should start to get covered up, ideally, but it may take several layers before that starts to look good. Or it just may never look good, I don't know, I haven't used putty that extensively before. Okay, we have got this dried up, and now it's ready to start painting. Now, the way I'm going to be doing this is just lots of layers, so I'm going to be doing one layer now, then I'll show it off, and then I'll probably do, I'll say maybe 3-4 layers of paint, depending on how it needs to look. Luckily with RuneScape, it's fairly easy to paint, you know, to be really detailed. It's almost like painting a wall level of painting precision required, not like some of these other things I've been painting after 3D printing, which are like trying to paint something this size, 10 different colours, is incredibly difficult. But this would be like 3-4 colours on the blowpipe. The only annoying thing is going to be sort of getting the pattern right, the sort of diamonds across the top of the blowpipe. So we shall see how this looks after I start painting. Okay, so we're on painting stage 1, and this looks very washed out at the moment, but that's completely fine, because I'm going to be going over this in 2 or 3 more coats of paint. The idea is, you want to do it in thin coats, because otherwise, if you just layer it on super thick, like in some places here, it will look streaky and it'll sort of be raised a bit. So if you want a smooth finish, you want to do it with loads of very thin layers. So yeah, that is coat 1. Right, that is another painting session done. Starting to look like it's shaping up here. I'm probably going to maybe do 1 or 2 more coats after, especially on the purple stuff, purple on the wings. But apart from that, it's starting to look like it's ready to glue together. Here we go, several coats of paint later, and we are almost ready. It's starting to really look like it's shaping up. I've gone for the charged version of the blowpipe, and after this paint dries, all that's left to do is glue it together. I've got some super strong industrial grade super glue. Don't get that in your hands. And then I've also got some finishing varnish style painting that I won't show. It'll be similar to the spray painting of the white coat that I did earlier, but just first I'll have to wait for this paint to dry. There'll be like an hour. Then I'll glue this together. I'll leave that overnight. Then in the morning I will spray paint this with the finishing coat, and then I will show the final product. And here we go, we have the finished piece. One toxic blowpipe. Looks pretty cool if I say so myself. In the end, what it's come out as, that's a full-size 3D model. And some things that I want to raise, I guess you can probably stop now if you just want to see the final model. But there we go, just give it a full turn around again. Sort of fits in your hands. I modelled the size off sort of how your in-game model holds it. And yeah, it's looking good. So a few things that went well is the join is practically invisible. That line there is the join. And when you zoom out, you don't see that at all, so it's looking a lot more like one piece. Things to take away. I should be using masking tape to create straight lines. It looks a bit wonky in some places. I want to be painting, and then I need to do straighter lines when painting. That's one thing that looks a little off on this. Especially around there, I can't paint. I've tried this with a ruler, but the paint goes underneath the ruler, so the ruler isn't particularly helpful. I perhaps need some electrical tape or something similar to stop it going under completely. And that was one of the main differences between this and, say, this cat dagger, which was my last bigger 3D print is the joins are so much cleaner. I spent more time sanding, and I decided to use the putty to make the joins invisible after painting, and it really makes a lot of difference. The other really big thing was the little grooves inside. So this, you can shake it around as much as you want. It's really not going to fall apart. This is super solid. Really vigorously shaking that, which is not what you can do with this dagger, to say the least. This has fallen apart several times because the contact points between the glue and each piece is really small, so you definitely need to do some work on the modelling programs before printing if you want to have a solid object that comes out at the end. And minor other points of failure was I didn't account for the paint thickness when joining. I need to sand down the joins more because it doesn't quite fit smoothly because the actual paint means it can't join completely. But anyway, I'm pretty happy with how this look turns out. Like, you see some flaws when you zoom in a lot more, but if you just look at it from a distance, like zoom out a bit more like this, looks great.